Chapter 13, Final Preparations. The next day at the shop, Big M broke out these diagrams he printed out for our files. The first one was of the larger Rodin coils that were wrapped around our crystals. Each one had 10 of these stacked one on top of the other around our crystal rods. This was someone else's idea that we incorporated into our device. Its job was to focus the force, also to increase it. Magic had figured that the Rodin coil would create a localized space in the center of its field, which creates the perfect vortex hole with a fractal magnetic field with spiraling arms. This eliminates the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This, in a sense, explains how a black hole works, where everything is compressed until it is swallowed up by the vortex. And if its energy is increased and forcefully increased, the workforce becomes greater for less energy. Typically, the energy is imploded and expelled in a high-energy burst, and a pulse would act like little electrical bombs going off. All you have to do is increase the frequency. Eventually, we eliminated the need for too many batteries and used capacitors. For safety's sake, we decided a need for backup solar cells, as Magic stated. These would free up power for our regular electronics. Plus, no matter where, we could reroute power for a safety startup if necessary. So we did something like this portrayal. Big M said, we mounted our solar panels on the bottom like above. These could rotate and be aimed. This would ensure life support continues in case of a failure. Carl said, so I guess we're going to put off the pressure check until after we adapt all of this new gear, including the emergency retro thrusters. Everyone was in agreement except Drew, who then spoke up with, hopefully, with one last safety concern. We need to make sure you're safe when you re-enter, just in case. So I talked to Bob about a week ago, our backer. I asked him to look for a parachute setup from the rocket surplus yards in Cocoa and Titusville area up there on US 1. I started to get impatient. I wanted to fly. Bob, our silent backer, became important now because the gold I mined from my mining claim was running out, which it had, although I held back what I have now. This was the last of it that I hung on to, about $10,000 worth at nugget value. Everything else I had was melted and used long ago. These are from the North Fork of the Trinity River, and I hung on to them as long as I could. Drew's millionaire friend became an important asset now. Bob informed me today he found several large parachutes left over from a re-entry capsule, but he would have to have it shipped from Texas, as the owner of that yard had a connection for surplus hardware there in one of the military's plane junkyards, the Air Force in particular. He said none could be found in Florida. They would be here in a few days, though. I asked at this time, being anxious, so what's our day of departure? Drew said, we figured by the time it's delivered, we could have everything cut and mounted to receive it. It would be here in about 4 days, give or take. We could do the pressure test tomorrow, and if that goes well, this could or would also give us time to check every other system again. I surveyed them all for an answer since our departure time changed many times now. So what, about 4 days from now, maybe 5? That's when we should be ready. Maybe a little sooner, I asked curiously. Give or take, as long as all looked each other over to make sure we were all on the same page. So yes, about then. There's one more thing, Magic said. I'm going to add a strobe to the bottom and 6 small running lights that will be green and red. Then Big M added, that way at night the craft won't look too different from other aircraft with running lights. It won't attract too much attention, especially at night. Carl also added this. I have programmed the computer to give you a pretty precise accuracy of distance and speed using the parallax method, using 2 opposing cameras depending on which side is facing the direction of travel. It will all work automatically and take over from one set of cameras to another. Amy brought this up. Alright guys, we forgot. We don't have a pilot to set the flight up anymore, so now what? Drew said, I talked to a friend of mine. You met him before, Grant. He advanced to a commercial jet pilot. He said that we would call it in to Valkyria as an experimental flight and craft. Then Drew came up with this. He was so funny. When we turn in the flight plan, we could say we are going to send up a balloon for weather or recreation. Everyone repeated, a weather balloon? Then everyone laughed. You want to use the government excuse about the Roswell incident? Oh my God, was repeated by a couple of us. We laughed uncontrollably, then Amy added, but we could use that, it's brilliant. We are going to launch a high-altitude balloon, which could work. This thing could be mistaken for a hot air balloon or a gas balloon. We could paint it like a can of soda or a Budweiser can. She laughed at herself, and some giggled with her. Carl added, yes, it could work, saying this still laughing. Nowadays they come in every shape and size and form, and it's an excellent idea, actually. Drew then added, we could take it to the limit by putting on a fake gondola and a couple of mannequins in a basket, then at the right time cut that part loose and just let it fall on fire to the ground, faking everyone out if spotted. Then, like a balloon, suddenly the rest could accelerate upwards. That cracked everybody up. It was good to laugh. He went on, it worked at Roswell. We all were rolling on the floor laughing now, and now my jaw hurt. We knew that once we got high enough, we would be out of sight before anyone could do anything about it, once we actually flew the technology. So it wouldn't really matter if it was spotted. There shouldn't be anything that can touch it or catch it once it gets going, at least in theory. Carl brought up one more important observation of what we lacked and forgot. Alright guys, one more thing. I'm in the process of adding programming, and it will take another day or 2. I have to program the cameras that are on the Earth side of the ship to any given time record and build a chart for long distance flight so that we can come back home. It's going to take time because it will need 6 points of references to be able to work. Amy asked, is that much programming necessary on this first flight, since you already have installed what we need to go on this expedition and re-enter our atmosphere? Well, Amy, if something was to go wrong, then it might be the most important part that we can upload for a return or correction of it if it deviates off course. because the further away from Earth, if that happens, the less any further from home by accident, if that would happen, is something to consider seriously. Drew jumped in. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be left out there lost in space with Dr. Zachary Magic Square or Smith, or Carl or the robot on board. We all busted out again. He sure knew how to lighten up the seriousness of our endeavor, referring to that beloved series we all watched as kids. Thanks to him, we laughed quite a bit that night. Drew had the uncanny ability of lightening up our hearts at the most serious moments of our lives as we kept getting reminders of the serious nature of what we were about to try to accomplish. I loved him for this, as he lightened up everybody's heart constantly. In the next few days, Carl had set up ground control and communications with our ship, also our cameras inside and out. It would be like they were there with us, visually, and we would be able to see outside in any direction. We installed a parabolic dish for communications. The dish would pop out of a panel from the top of the ship and then would crawl out onto any outside surface of the craft from any position. It could be pointed and aimed back at Earth. And when we flipped the ship around, it would do the same. While doing that maneuver, we would lose the signal for a few seconds. But the computer would then realign it in its memory of the positions calculated from the 6-point reference star chart positions. It was always gathered through the cameras. Drew would film the liftoff so we would know what that looked like when the ionization engulfed the craft. We wanted to know if our craft would look like what we knew as unidentified objects. Also, for our proof to the world, a strobe light would be the marker that it was terrestrial. When we were alone, Amy asked me, "Why did it take so long to try to build this and bring your friends in on this?" Well, it was doubt and fear, or rather apprehension. I told you my stories. The doubt was, how could it be possible? And then it became a responsibility. Could I handle that? How could one person make a difference? But mostly, I had to be sure it was a science we were playing with. Doubt slows you down, even when you know you are right about whatever you are doing. Magic and I talked about this, and if it wasn't for his interest in my stories about dowsing and my working model, this endeavor would never have happened. 2 of my experiments that proved it convinced him. Magic knew, and I knew for sure, we might have a chance at this. Magic had been building and experimenting with free energy, and what I showed him took it to a whole new level. He improved Tesla's #70 patent for the radiant energy receiver. Then, with the coating on the ship, with an amalgamated surface, it would work beyond our wildest dreams. So why do you ask? It was the goal of all of us that kept me here at first, and then I had to be with you. Understand? Yes, I do. If you would have waited any longer, I wouldn't have been here. I didn't see my destiny changing into what it is now somehow. Some things I think we aren't meant to see, Amy. I believe you're right. That night when we got home, Amy looked a little distressed. The clock was ticking, so I said to her, "You know, if it's our destiny to bring about such a great change now, then we have nothing to fear. We create our own path and destiny without knowing that we will, and if it is meant to be, it will happen. Everything else about how and what I went through, you know. The fear left me when Magic and I accepted the fact that in the future it would be developed anyway. You and all of us know the truth about that. This crisis is about our future, so now the time for this to happen, if ever, and it has been left up to people like us somehow, is now. To know that people in power were ignoring the facts, even with evidence that there is a future calamity coming that involves the human race and the planet, and that history showed this had happened over and over again, made our decision to do this project easy. Are you still with me? I asked, to make sure she heard everything. Of course I am, she said. I'm only concerned with our safety, and now that I found you, I want to keep you, not lose you, and I'm not leaving your side. So we are on the same page. She nodded yes. That's great, I said. We're not going to fail. You now know that. I believe you. Her devotion is something that eluded me all my life, and now I was the happiest person on the planet. I told her that I loved her as we lay to rest. It wouldn't be too long till we tested all of our equipment and theories, and if it was all correct, everything should go seamlessly, and it would allow all of us a greater freedom and stability in the world, which would now slowly heal the world at the same time. And all we needed Grant for was to put in the flight plans, and he was on his way to do that. Next, Chapter 14, Time Has Come.